Welcome. My name is Mr. Sunarine, and today we're going to be looking at how can you compare decimals. Before jumping right into the lesson, I'm going to go over some math terminology that will help us in understanding what we're going to be talking about today. There's some terminology. The first one that I'm going to look at is less than. Less than is used by this symbol to the right here, and we notice that it opens to the right. When we see this example, we can read it as 8 is less than 9. And notice how the symbol is facing a larger quantity. It's facing the 9. The second terminology is greater than. We see that in this symbol, the greater than symbol is facing to the left. And here's an example that demonstrates this. 7 is greater than 4. And here again, we see that the symbol is facing the larger quantity. The last terminology is equal to. When we look at equal to, 5 equals 5. 5 is equal to 5. Remember when working with inequalities or these symbols, you want to make sure that the symbol is facing the larger quantity. So in this example, notice how this symbol is facing the 4, and we would read this as 4 is greater than 3. Again, the inequality faces the larger number or quantity. So hope this is helpful. We're going to go into our lesson. Drag the expression shorter than or longer than to complete the sentence below. Then use the place value chart to help you compare the numbers. Here we see two values, 0 and 4/10 and 0 and 34 hundredths. We also see it located in this chart as well, and we have some sentences provided. The length of tape that is 0 and 4/10 meters is blank. The length of tape that is 0 and 34 hundredths meters. We also have the value quantity over here, and we have some potential options for putting the inequality symbols to make this true. So I want you to pause the video and think about what would go in these spaces that would make this correct. So again, pause the video and we will check to see what works. So hopefully that you have worked through the problem and seeing which one would make sense. We can see that the length of tape that is 0 and 4/10 meters is longer than the length of tape that is 0 and 34 hundredths of a meter. When looking at this symbol, we want to make sure that we identify the larger quantity, which is 0 and 4/10, and we look at the symbol that is going to face this quantity here. And we see that this one would make sense, and we would read this as 0 and 34 hundredths is less than 0 and 4/10. Now what I want you to do is we have some examples here and there are some weights associated to each of the items below. And I want you to fill out the chart and see what makes sense and placing these numbers in the right column. In addition, I want you to complete the sentences using the words heavier than or lighter than. And here we see that there are two quantities being compared and we have to choose which word makes sense. So pause the video and on the next slide, we're going to reveal the answers. So hopefully you work through the problems and here are the answers provided so that you can check your work and to see if you got this correct. When filling out this table, you want to make sure that when we're looking at the first one for avocado, we see that it is 0 and 2/10. when we're writing it, we notice how we could put the 0 in the 1 spot, the decimal, the tens, but there's no hundreds. And if there's no hundreds, we can place a 0 as a placeholder here. When looking at the sentences, we see that the avocado is heavier than the apple. The bunch of bananas is lighter than the grapes. And we can see this comparing the quantities from above. Now we're going to go into placing the correct symbol for each problem. So before we get into it, strategy is to think about which quantity is larger and think about which inequality would be helpful and would face the larger quantity. So again, pause the video and then we're going to look at what the answers are. Okay, so hopefully you had some time to go over these questions, and here are the answers that's provided. So when we look at the first answer choice, we see that 0 and 25 tenths or 25 tenths is less than 0 and 4 tenths. We also see that 0 and 8 tenths is greater than 0 and 79 hundredths. The last one, 0 and 91 hundredths, is greater than 0 and 19th hundredths. Now we're going to move on to our summarization. How can you compare decimals? When comparing decimals, here are some key pieces. Look at the tenths place, then the hundredths place. If there are no hundredths place, add a 0. And use a decimal chart, see the image to the right over here. So hope this was helpful and have a great day.